Once upon a time, I built a house that almost broke me. Wait, that's happened a few times, but this particular one was the granddaddy of them all. This one was so bad that at the end, I was borrowing money to finish their project. I'm Curtis Lawson, and welcome to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. Continuing my last episode, which was about the hidden cost of construction, and we're talking about mental health for both builders and for homeowners. So back to my story. I think it was the second new home that I had ever built, and it was the first fully custom home for a client. To that point, we'd only done remodels, with the exception of building that one spec house. So I'd never really had to fully budget and plan a large custom home, and I'd never had to deal with the mountain of decisions and selections that go with a project like that, and a picky homeowner, of course. And I didn't have the systems in place, the processes in place to track all that stuff, nor was I properly tracking my financials. And so the project started out pretty well. My crews knew what they were doing. Construction-wise, we were going really well, and everything was progressing just like it should. And everybody was happy. There were a few things along the way that I was realizing I probably left out of the budget, and they seemed pretty minor, so I wasn't sweating it too much because we had a contingency budget in place to cover that stuff. But then all that little slippage started to catch up with me. And if you don't know the term slippage, that means it's all the little small amounts of money that we bleed when individual budget items start to have overruns. Our profits start to slip, hence the term slippage, right? So before you know it, my contingency budget on this project is gone, and then the slippage continues, and so now we're eating into my profit. And back then, I was under this crazy assumption that all builders just did like cost plus 10% on their projects, and that was pretty standard on new construction. I was scared to push those limits, so I was not in any way like already killing it on this project to begin with. But I always have a pretty positive attitude. And I figured that even if I made less on this project, or if I broke even, that we could just count this as a learning experience. It's in a really great neighborhood, kind of a primo part of Houston. So we're still going to get some great marketing out of people just driving by and seeing our sign in the yard. Well, we get about 85% of the way through this house, and I am out of money. I mean, out. Some other projects that we had at the same time were also experiencing slippage, shockingly. And the economy on top of that was definitely in a slump. And so I'm pretty scared now, and I'm just wondering how I'm going to finish this project. Well, the owner of the project and I had gotten to be in pretty good terms over the last couple of years, and we had breakfast about once a week just to kind of catch up and chat. And so we were eating breakfast at Denny's one morning, and I just said, "Brother, I got to tell you, I don't have the money to finish your house." And I basically told him everything that had been going on, and I said, "You know that I'm a stand-up guy, and I'm trying to get this house built for you. I'm trying to get it finished, but it's not looking good." And so he actually says, shockingly, "I tell you what, I will loan you the money to finish my house, and then you can pay me back over the next year." And so that's what we did. He ended up loaning me a couple $100,000 to finish his own house on something that I underbid. Now, I got to tell you, because in my consulting business, I've seen this similar situation play out a lot of times with other builders. And I'm not trying to brag on myself here, but maybe I am just a little bit. But there aren't that many builders out there who would do this. Most people would just walk away, leave the owner stuck high and dry, or they'd hit the owner with a pile of change orders, try to make that shortfall up. But I'm proud to say that I did what I think is the right thing to do in that situation. I borrowed the money, got the family into their house, and then I paid them back every bit of that cash over the next couple of years. So at the same time this is going on, my business wasn't doing well in other areas. Again, big shocker, right? Based on what I've said. So I actually ended up borrowing money from a family member and maxing out some credit cards on top of the money that I borrowed from the customer. And I spent years digging out of that hole. So getting back into our mental health topic today, I promise you I'm going somewhere with all this whole story. So getting back into our mental health topic, the first thing that I got to say is, and this first bit is for my builder listeners out there, you got to know your numbers. This is a whole other podcast by itself, potentially, but you got to know your numbers. And this sounds obvious, right? But you have to know what it costs to operate your business, your overhead, to cover your overhead. You have to know what it really costs to execute that project. And then you have to have business processes and systems in place to protect that profit, to guard that profit with your life. Think about, how are you going to prevent slippage? What kind of systems are in place to prevent slippage? Are you just guessing at those cost estimates in your budget, or did you actually go out and get like real firm quotes from your trade partners? And then once you got those quotes, did you issue purchase orders, work orders to get those prices locked in so that you're not having them come back and give you another price later when it comes time to start the work? Are your takeoffs accurate? Are you managing your schedule to hit that 12-month project deadline and make sure it doesn't stretch to 16 months? All of these little micro decisions and parts of a project, and the fact that the projects are doing really well or really poorly, all that factors into your mental and your emotional health and well-being. And your stress level and your emotional health is not going to be good if you only have pennies in your bank account, is it? All right, now homeowners. When you hire a builder who is cheap, or he's a brand new builder, or it's someone who maybe has been around for a while, but they can't articulate their business processes to you, there's a high chance that you're going to end up in this situation. I have seen this over and over and over. Nearly every case like this that comes across my desk as a consultant, I could just go ahead and write you the full story before I even start digging in very much. I see this over and over, and that was the whole purpose of me even starting this podcast to begin with, was to prevent people from getting into this exact situation. And I've seen so many homeowners, so many customers get absolutely just screwed by contractors. Most of those contractors, as I said, are not going to be willing or able to do what I did and own up to their mistakes and finish the job. Even if they are, would you have that extra couple $100,000 sitting in your bank just to, nicely give your builder? Would you be the same person that he was to let that happen, right? All right, so you can tell that this is hits very close to home. I'm getting kind of worked up about this. I'm really passionate about this exact topic, and this all relates directly to this mental health discussion. This situation that I've just been talking about, again, it's not good for anyone's emotional or mental well-being. So just real quick to recap that last podcast episode where we started this conversation, I brought up this concept that every construction project, every physical construction project also has this emotional twin lurking in the shadows. And that emotional twin is what takes its toll on both builders and homeowners. And that's created by a few things. For builders, we're often working with tight budgets, demanding customers who may or may not be educated about the process. They may be distrusting. The builders may have too many projects going on, too many balls in the air. And then, like I was mentioning in my own story, just people just basing their numbers on situations that aren't realistic. We're basing everything on numbers that just don't work, right? And so then on the other side of the coin, homeowners get stressed by a lack of transparency from builders, by receiving timelines that aren't realistic, selections that don't work out, budgets get blown, communication breakdowns. And so they start to get uneasy, and maybe they get comfortable for a little bit early in the process. But once they lose trust and once they start kind of seeing the chinks in the armor, things are just going to start to slide from there. But I ended the last episode by saying there is hope, there is a better way, and that's really what I want to focus on in today's podcast. So I'll start with the builder side of this like I did last time. So my question for you is, builders, how do we break out of this? How do we break this cycle? Or how do we not get into this in the first place? And I think a lot of this is reframing the builder-customer relationship to be a collaborative and transparent process. And that sounds super easy to say, but it's actually kind of a hard thing to do if you're not already doing it. So here's my thoughts on how to make that happen. And if you listen to this show a lot, you're going to say, Curtis, I've heard you say most of this before, and you have, because this is what I harp on all the time. So, all right. So transformative step number one. And we've done numerous podcasts on this topic recently. Transformative step number one: use pre-construction agreements, or design agreements, professional services agreements, whatever you want to call those things, but get in front of the project at an early stage, if at all possible. And if that's not possible, let's say they already have design done when you enter, at least get a pre-construction agreement to where you're getting paid for your time. You have plenty of time. You're being compensated, so you're actually going to put in the effort, put in the time, instead of doing a free bid. And then use that time wisely, properly scope out the project, bid it out to subs, just fully flesh it out before you ever rush into a contract. So by getting on board from the outset, a realistic budget can get established. And design, whether you're doing that internally or with an outside firm, design can be tailored to that budget. And with this process, you as the builder are there at the table in the meetings giving feedback to the rest of the team, the architect, the designer, the homeowner. You're giving feedback through this process. You're asking questions, you're answering questions, listening. And you're not getting a set of drawings after the architect has already spent hours and hours of their time, which equals client dollars. And you're helping put design guardrails in place to make sure that things aren't getting designed. They're going to blow the budget. And that's going to create this mental anguish too, right? And all of this prevents the homeowner's anxiety and frustration when they get a bid back and all of a sudden it's way out of their budget. When all the parties in this process are a team working together, you're positioned to collaborate and solve problems together rather than fighting over unexpected costs, change orders later, things that aren't clear on down the road. So we're taking potential project friction and we're turning that into this collaborative, shared process. It's goal-oriented, right? And we're setting the project off on the right foot from the very beginning. I've seen plenty of contractors convert to this business model. We did it not too long after the disaster that I just told you about. I said, man, there's got to be a better way. I got some coaching on this. We changed our processes. Lots of other builders have done it. If you're not doing it, just do it, right? There's no excuse not to do this. So great first step if you're already doing this. But then a lot of people drop the ball after this. They do the pre-construction, they get it all set up, but then they don't do the rest of the steps to really transform. So transformative step number two, just having an approach of transparency and honesty. And this one might be a little bit contentious or debated, but I believe in showing your numbers, showing your cards as much as possible. There's a lot of varying opinions on this. I know there's a lot of old timers out there. I've heard the joke when people ask for a cost breakdown. The guys are like, breakdown? You want a breakdown? All right, it costs this much to do it, and it costs this much not to do it. I've heard old timers say that several times. They don't want to give a price breakdown, right? But today's customers just have so much more information at their fingertips. They can hop on Google and they can use AI tools now, and they can do way more research than people could do 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? And people are generally more educated today than they used to be. So on top of that, the bigger the pool that you're playing in, like the larger the price range, the more expensive the house, you're dealing with more educated clients. And those people at those price points are going to expect to see that kind of stuff. Oftentimes, these people have already done multiple projects before with varying degrees of success. They're more wary, more distrusting, and they really want to have the data to back up what they're being told. So I think when we show people what the true cost is to build or remodel a house, and we show them a budget with hundreds of line items on it, right? It does two things. One, it shows them that we actually have put in the time to think through all this. I've had people see this budget that I have. Sometimes it's 400 line items, and they're like, oh my God, you really thought through everything. They've got like door hinges listed on there as an individual line item. They're like, wow, you even thought about, you counted how many door hinges there are and priced out options on that. Like, people are blown away at all the micro decisions that have to happen all the way through the process that they don't think about, right? So when you show them this super detailed proposal, you're proving to them that, hey, I actually put in the time and the effort to really flesh out this design. And I bet you that the guy doing the free estimate is not doing this, right? He's giving plumbing fixtures, $10,000, hardware, $2,000. He's not breaking this stuff down to really show what goes into the numbers because he probably doesn't know, or he's not putting in the time to do it, right? So all of this budgeting process is building consumer confidence by showing, again, that we are more thorough, we're more detailed. And then the second part of this is we're showing the customer and we're explaining to them how and why we as the business need to make money and deserve to make money, right? We're not here to do this for free. I don't mind explaining to people why and how we make money, because honestly, if they don't respect the fact that we have a business to operate, we have families to feed, me as the business owner, my employees, if they don't respect that fact, honestly, I don't want them as a customer. So it's a great chance for us to educate our customers about the process, why we charge what we charge, explain that. And then I think all of this, both sides of that, just really help build trust. So transparency to me is a huge thing. All right. Transformative step number 3, you've got to have strong processes and procedures in place. And this is probably the biggest breakdown that I see. A lot of builders do pre-construction. A lot of builders are pretty transparent, but when it comes time to actually run the project, they don't have the systems in place to effectively run the project. And that goes from pre-construction all the way through warranty, right? So let's say that you're having your pre-construction meetings, you're transparent with your costs. Your clients start out having a very high level of trust with you. Man, this guy's killing it. We're super confident in how this project's going to go. But once you start the project and they see that your field teams aren't communicating, or they see that the sequencing isn't lining up on trades, or people aren't showing up when they're supposed to show up, or the wrong product gets delivered, or whatever it is, right? It becomes apparent to them pretty quickly that you don't have the processes in place to manage the project. And again, not just the physical construction processes, right? But also kind of the soft stuff. So managing schedules, kind of the organization and dissemination of information among your team, vendor management. Are you issuing purchase orders for work? Are you ordering materials when you need it and planning around lead times? Like all this stuff, your customers can actually notice if it starts to lag or if it's non-existent. Other great processes are things like phase checklists for your project managers to do, having regular site meetings with your customers. We require our PMs to be face-to-face once a week, at least with clients. And then using project management software. Everybody in 2025 needs to be using project management software. There's no excuse not to be doing that. Processes, all the stuff I've talked about, processes build consumer confidence. They see that you have these tools, they see that you're using these tools, and they're like, man, these guys have really got their act together. And they worry less about how things are going to go because you've already demonstrated your ability to properly manage the pre-construction, the construction project, and they can see that you have processes to run your business. They see that you're an organized person, right? So processes to me are the number one area that most companies are lacking. All right, transformative step number 4, communication. Transparent communication is just the core of maintaining customer builder relations and internal inter-office team mental health. And it's essential to this partnership, collaborative model between builder, architect, designer, homeowner. You have to have the communication. When there's silence, silence can be unbearable. Nobody likes to be in the dark. Think about this in your own personal life. Don't you get anxious if people aren't communicating with you? I know I do. There's nothing worse than getting the silent treatment from people around you. And when you're a customer and you're spending $1 million with somebody on a project and you're not getting communication, it's like you're writing checks and you're not being kept in the loop. How does that feel to a customer? So builders, you have to communicate with your clients. And this is one of those areas where project management software, in my opinion, is absolutely essential. So we tell customers, this is how we communicate. Just like saying this is how we work to describe your processes or to describe your pre-construction processes, right? You tell them, this is how we communicate. Which shows them, back to processes, it shows them we have a process for communication. And by having a process, what does that tell people? It tells them that communication is important to you because you have something in place for that, right? So we tell customers that all the project communications have to be run through the software. Please, no texts and emails. We have this system in place. This is how we use it, and this is why we use it. I like to tell people, if you're sending text messages, phone calls to your project manager or any one person in the office, and that person goes on vacation, that person quits, gets fired, gets hit by a bus, whatever the situation is, all that communication is poof, it's gone. Whereas if you run all your communication through our software, now you can be assured that no matter what turnover might happen, no matter who has to step into the process or be involved, everybody on the team has access to that communication. We all know what's happening. We can stay on top of it. If Joe's on vacation, everybody else can cover for Joe, right? So having central communication is super important. So I have an analogy that I came up with that I think is kind of relevant here. You know how workers wear, or they should wear, hard hats, use fall protection equipment, steel-toed boots. That's called PPE, personal protection equipment. Well, I think project management software is like a digital PPE. It's protecting us against poor project management, and it can help manage our mental workload along with the project, and that means less stress. So technology is great, and when you use it with intent, it can transform a chaotic, unpredictable process into one that feels controlled and collaborative, and it helps mitigate the stress for everybody that's involved. People feel in control when they are informed. And so by centralizing your communication, by providing constant updates, we can replace our customers' fear of the unknown with a sense of control. They feel involved, not like they're standing on the outside looking in. All right, transformative step number 5, and this is the last one, is empathy. Sometimes in a business transaction, we as business owners, employees, we tend to lose sight of the human element. We do this so many times on a daily, weekly basis. We've done this so many times in our life. To us, it's very transactional, and we have to realize that to these people, this is not just a business transaction. This is something that they're putting hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into. Even if it's a small project, $10,000, $20,000, that amount of money means something to people. And oftentimes, this is something that people have saved for years and years for, or they're taking out a loan that's going to take them 15, 20, 30 years to pay back. And so this is a very personal thing. It's very emotional process for our customers. And we have to take the approach where we are sensitive to not only that side of it, but also, because they haven't done this before, they have a lot of nervousness. They have a lot of apprehension about the process. And so by always keeping that in mind, always thinking about, hey, this is a person that I'm dealing with. It's not a number. It's not a transaction. They're probably stressed. They have their own stresses going on in their lives outside of just this project. They've got their kids and their aging parents, and they've got all the things that we all deal with, right? They have that stuff too. So approach your customers with a more emphatic, I'm not sure that's not the right word, empathetic, there we go, empathetic mindset. And that will really transform your business, in my opinion. So those 5 things, pre-construction involvement, transparency and honesty, processes, communication, and then empathy. These 5 key areas can be transformative in decreasing stress and helping us operate in a better mental state. So, all right. So how does all of this translate to the homeowner side? All right. So I'm going to talk to homeowners here a little bit. We've already spent a lot of time on the builders. So these builder changes that I'm talking about directly affect the homeowner, and they make the building process better for both parties. So I think saying that, step 1 for the homeowner is you have to choose a builder to work with who embodies these things that I'm talking about, right? So stop chasing the low number. Realize that one builder is not magically going to get you some way better deal than everybody else. You're not going to get a mansion for the price of a double wide. Grandpa always said, if the price is too good to be true, it probably is. So how do you as a consumer know how to pick a builder if you're not evaluating based on price? Well, instead of bidding the project to 3 builders, instead interview 3 builders. Still talk to multiple builders. I would never tell anybody just pick me out of the blue and call it a day. No, you need to talk to more than one company and interview people, and don't focus on price in that conversation. Maybe don't even talk about price at all. Talk about all those things that I just mentioned a minute ago. Like, ask them if they can be involved in pre-construction. What is your pre-construction process? How do you plan a project? Ask them, how do you communicate? What's your process for that? Ask about their team. Ask them what kind of project management software they use. And just get a feel for their personality. Do you feel like they're going to be empathetic towards you in your situation? Or are they going to be a hard ass and hard to deal with the whole way through, right? Are they going to be transparent with pricing? Make your decision based on these things, right? You can get a great feel for how someone's going to treat you throughout the project based on how they treat you during pre-construction. And that's one of the great things about having a totally separate pre-construction process for you as a homeowner, is that now you've got a few months to see how this company works. You can see how they handle their bidding, estimating, how do they communicate with you during this process, how transparent are they. So you have all this time to kind of observe how they work. You're kind of dating them before you get married. And then if you don't like the way they're doing things, guess what? You don't have to build a house with them. Most good builders are doing 2 separate contracts for pre-construction and construction. And that way, either party has the chance to say, you know what? I don't think this is a great fit. Let's just move on before construction starts, before they get locked into some big 9, 12, 16, 24-month commitment of being married to this company that you don't like the way that they're handling things, right? All right, so for homeowners, transformative step number 2 is to make sure that you have the time and the bandwidth to undertake a project. I've seen so many people undertake a project who do not, honestly, they just don't have the time. They're honestly way too busy. They can't work this into their schedule like they should, and they don't put in the work on their side during the planning process. And it's a lot of work. So on the consumer side, like you have to have the bandwidth to spend in the pre-construction planning, and then during construction, you have to have the bandwidth to be having regular site meetings. You have to have enough flexibility in your schedule to be a part of the process. You can't just stand off to the side, have it get done, and then step back in and it's finished. It doesn't work that way. I've seen so many people undertake this process who are honestly like way too busy. They can't put in the work. And what happens is the architect and designer in pre-construction, they're wanting to move forward, right? Like they don't get paid unless they're drawing and moving ahead. So they're pushing ahead. And maybe they give you a brief look at it and you're busy. So you say, okay, yeah. And you sign off on it, but you don't really pay that much attention. You don't dig into it. So essentially decisions are just kind of getting made without you being fully aware of them. Maybe again, you kind of give it a cursory sign off and yeah, it looks good, and move on, right? But you don't really spend the time to dig into the details. So this manifests itself when the house is under construction. The owner walks in and the owner said, why does it look like that? And you're like, well, it's on the plans. And they're like, I don't remember approving that. And the architect pulls out the papers like, hey, here's your signature on this design, right? I see this happen quite a lot, actually. People are totally disengaged during pre-construction. They get something built, they see it, they don't like it, and the rest of the team's like, you agreed to it, you signed off on it, you signed the construction contract, here it is. And they're like, no, but I didn't understand that's what it was going to look like. Well, guess what? That's because you didn't take time during pre-construction to actually pay attention and think about it. I've had this happen twice. I mean, I think we do things right here at our company, but even we had this happen. We had a totally disengaged client during pre-construction, and right now we're in the middle of building it. And he walks to the job site and he's like, why'd you do it like that? That's not the color that I wanted, or that's not the material that I wanted. I'm like, sir, it's on every single plan that you've looked at for the last 9 months. So what happens is that ends up in change orders. It ends up in stuff getting ripped out and redone. The change orders are flying around. At that point, nobody's happy, right? The customers are not happy because they're getting hit with change orders. The builder's not happy because things are slowing down, and there's this tension, right? So it goes back to the mental state. There's this tension that nobody wants to have. There's arguing and there's fighting over this stuff, all because the work wasn't put in months ago to properly figure this stuff or pay attention to understand what you're buying, right? And then also on the process side of this, so I was just talking about like the customer not paying attention to specifications, drawings. Same thing happens on the process side. So I know we explain, a lot of builders explain, this is how our communication works, right? Like I said a minute ago, this is how we communicate. This is how change orders work. This is who's going to be on site running your project. And maybe the homeowner's kind of like, half-ass listening. And then later on they get mad because they don't understand why they can't communicate via text message. They're like, I don't want to log in your project management software. I don't need another app on my phone. I've had several people say that. I don't want to log in your project management software. I'm like, well, we've explained to you this is how we communicate. So, sir, this is what we need you to do. Or maybe they're arguing about like why there's a change order, why there's a change order fee, or why isn't the owner of the company on site running their job? Why do I have this project manager? You're the owner of the company. You're the guy that I hired. Well, sir, we have a team, and we were very clear on that, on who was going to be on site running your project, right? So again, they're too busy. They're not listening during meetings. They're kind of halfway paying attention, and so we have all this conflict and all this confusion. So I know it's really hard to admit that you're too busy, but you really have to be honest with yourself. Not being fully present ends up creating more stress in the long run for you, your builder, your architect, for everybody involved. So be involved, be present. All right, next step. And this is maybe a little bit outside the box. Pre-commit to having some buffers and some discipline for yourself. So what happens is, and again, I don't care how good the builder is, how good the architect and designer are, or how much you as the customer have planned, you're going to get a change order at some point. Maybe because something came up, maybe it's an error on the plans, maybe it's a site condition, maybe if it's a remodel, maybe something hidden in the walls. I promise you, I've never had a single project ever that hasn't had at least one change order. Or then this is most common. You're going to change your mind on something as things go along. You're going to be out on the weekend and you're going to see something in a store. You're going to be like, ooh, shiny, I want that. And you're going to call your builder, be like, hey, I saw this. Got to have it in my house. Change order, right? So to kind of mitigate this, I think you need to add two buffers. You need one money buffer. So when you're doing your internal, for yourself, your family, your project budget, when you're setting your project budget, I recommend setting aside maybe an extra 5 to 10% on top of your project cost. Maybe you don't even tell your builder that you've got it. Don't even tell your lender. Don't tell anybody that you've got it, but just know, hey, I've got an extra 5% on top of my project just sitting in the bank account just to cover these little things that I know are going to come up. Or maybe you do work it into your loan. Maybe you tell your banker, hey, let's put an extra 5 or 10% on this loan that's not shown on the builder side, but we know that we can borrow that if we have to have it. But let this be either an emergency fund or let it be your special treat fund. For all those little shiny things that might come up along the way. And so this is going to allow you to feel good about making a change, or just not to freak out maybe, but you'll feel good about making a change. You'll say, you know what? I knew that I was going to want to treat myself to something during this process. And here it is. I want this item. I've got this money set aside. I feel good about it, right? So now you're less stressed because you know that you have that buffer in place for yourself, right? And then on time, go ahead and build in an extra 10, 20% on the schedule from whatever your builder tells you. I think that most builders struggle with project schedules. It's something that's really hard to control, depending on what part of the country that you're in. There's various weather things that can come up. I think we had one project a few years ago that had 2 hurricanes and 1 tropical storm, all that happened during one project. And so, can't work for a while. And then 2 of those were like major flooding events in the city. No one could get around, right? So that added months to the project to that year. You never know when that's going to happen. So having a time buffer in place is going to help your sanity, right? And then also don't schedule some special event that has to happen. I have to be in my house on December 24th. I've got a giant family Christmas Eve dinner planned. Don't do that to yourself. All that's going to do is it's going to stress you as the homeowner out. It's really going to stress your builder out. And if it's not realistic, like if that timeline's is just not going to happen, and the builder's rushing to make it happen, and we get all the way up to it, and you find out on December 22nd or 23rd that you can't move in on the 24th, you're going to be mad. The builder's going to have gone through all that heartache for nothing. So just be realistic and don't schedule some special event, kid's birthday party, holiday party, whatever, until you really know that you're moving into the house. All right. So set yourself up for success by adding a time buffer. In addition to those 2 buffers, one other thing that I recommend is to maybe consider doing, I'll call it a scope freeze buffer. So come up with some dates and just say, you know what, I'm going to give myself a little latitude on making a couple changes or a couple decisions beyond what deadlines the builder sets for me. But I'm going to give myself, I know that I'm going to want to change something. So I'm just going to say that I'm not going to change anything in this category after a certain date, right? My plumbing fixtures, I went to the showroom, I picked them out. I'm happy with them now. I'm going to check back on those maybe in February. But beyond that, I am not making any changes. So your builder will definitely appreciate that. But if you go ahead and set some dates where you're like, gosh darn it, I'm going to be happy with whatever decision I made at this point, that's going to help your mental health too, because people have a big tendency to second guess design decisions, and you can just wear yourself to death over, oh, is that material right? Did I really put in the time and effort? Is that really what I want? I have to live with this for 20 years. Build yourself in some grace, build yourself in some buffer to allow yourself the latitude to make some micro changes to things. So 3 questions I think that are good to ask yourself in that regard are, number 1, is this change, is this a mission critical change, or is this just kind of a preference? Number 2, am I okay with this change costing X dollars? Again, going back to your budget buffer that you put in. Am I okay with this change costing X dollars, or am I okay with this change adding, X number of days or months to the schedule because I'm making this change? And then lastly, am I still going to want this change 30 days from now, or am I just excited about this in the moment right now? And if you can't say yes to those 3 questions, park the idea. So the mental health benefit to these buffers that I've talked about, these 3 buffers, the benefit is that it turns emergencies into planned events. It's okay that I got this change order. I've already planned for it. It's okay that I want to treat myself to this extra item. I already had a treat budget set aside. It's kind of like if you're on a diet and you've already planned that cheat day and your overall calorie count. You're like, hey, I'm doing 2,000 calories a day right now on my diet, but you know what? I'm going to cut back to 1,800 for 4 days because I know that on Friday I'm going to want to have that ice cream, and so I'm planning that extra buffer in there to allow myself to have that treat. So all of this is going to help your builder's mental health as well. Trust me. Because when you're not getting worked up as the homeowner, the builder's stress level is also not being pushed through the roof. All right, lastly, I think we're on step 4 now out of these homeowner steps. I only have 4 for homeowners. Builders got 5, homeowners you get 4. So this is the last step, this is the same step as my last one for builders, empathy, right? Understand that your builder is human and makes mistakes. Be willing to give them some grace. Also understanding that just like you, they've got families, they've got the same day-to-day struggles that you as the homeowner have. Realize that they're going to, occasionally make mistakes. Realize that they also have multiple other projects going on, and they have multiple other homeowners who may or may not be in the same mental place as you. And so we as builders deal with a lot of angst on a daily basis from clients. So I think for you as a homeowner to have some empathy and give your builder some grace, I think both parties giving each other grace, both directions, just goes a long way in improving the builder-client relationship and helping everyone's mental health in the process. So to kind of wrap this one up, I think the most valuable thing that a professional builder, architect, the most professional thing that we can provide is not just a well-built, well-designed project, but it's a confident, peaceful, and less stressful experience for everybody involved, for themselves and for their client. I think when both parties are using these strategies that I've talked about today, when a project is properly planned collaboratively, and when it's viewed as a partnership, and that's built on trust and transparent communication, these invisible psychological costs, this invisible twin for both sides are going to be greatly reduced. The success of a project is measured not only by the quality of the craftsmanship, but also by the quality of the human journey. That's all I got today. Thanks for joining me on the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.